Disclaimer: this content is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised. My name is Marissa. I'm 39. And I've been sitting on this secret like it's a ticking bomb inside my chest, waiting for the right, or maybe the wrong, moment to explode. You see, if you asked anyone, they'd tell you I have a wonderful life. Married to a man everyone adores, Eric, my husband of 14 years. Beautiful home, stable careers, vacations twice a year, the occasional dinner party where we laugh with our friends over good wine and predictable stories. From the outside, it's enviable. From the inside, well, that's where the cracks start to show. It didn't used to be like this. When Eric and I first met, it was electric. The way he looked at me like I was some kind of rare discovery. His hand would graze my back as we walked into restaurants, his fingertips anchoring me in a world that felt thrilling but safe. We couldn't keep our hands off each other back then, pulling each other into dark corners at parties, exchanging knowing glances that led to breathless nights. I used to feel wanted, desired, essential. But over the years, the current shifted. Slowly at first, so slowly I almost didn't notice. Work pressures. His long hours. The endless responsibilities that come with raising his son, Nathan, my stepson, who moved in with us full-time after his mother remarried. I love Nathan, I do, but his presence changed the temperature of our house in ways I couldn't fully articulate. Now, when Eric touches me, it feels functional. Like muscle memory. His kisses land on my cheek instead of my lips more often than not. His hands rest on my waist but don't pull me close. The cuddles that once left me warm and breathless now end with him rolling over, leaving a cold gap between us that seems to grow wider each night. I try. God, I try. I wear the lingerie he once bought me, he doesn't even seem to notice. I initiate conversations about us, about what's missing, and he responds with patience, but not passion. It's just a phase, Marissa, he says, rubbing my shoulder like I'm a child needing reassurance. We're fine. You're overthinking it. And maybe I was. For a long time, I told myself it was normal. Love changes, people grow comfortable, the fire dims. That's just marriage, right? But comfort isn't supposed to feel like invisibility. The moment I knew, really knew, was more trivial than I expected. A Thursday evening. Nathan had just gotten home from college for spring break. I was in the kitchen making dinner, slicing vegetables, humming under my breath. Eric walked in, glanced at me, and gave me that distracted half-smile he reserves for things that don't require much attention. But when Nathan entered moments later, Eric lit up. His eyes brightened, his energy shifted, full of pride, of warmth, of genuine joy. They embraced, clapped each other's backs, exchanged inside jokes. I stood there holding a knife, invisible in my own home. It wasn't jealousy. I adore Nathan. But in that moment, I saw how easily Eric could feel something deeply, just not for me anymore. The man who once couldn't wait to get me alone now barely saw me standing right in front of him. That night, lying beside him in the dark, I stared at the ceiling while his breathing evened out. I reached out tentatively, fingers brushing his arm, but he didn't stir. He was already gone, even though his body was right there. That was when the ache really began. Not a sharp pain, but a dull, constant heaviness. A loneliness you can only feel when you're still technically loved, just not in the way you need. And then, a few weeks later, something happened with Nathan. Something that, God help me, I never saw coming. Eric is a paramedic. 12-hour shifts, rotating nights and weekends. I used to find it heroic, his calm under pressure, the way he saved strangers in crisis. It's part of what drew me to him. His ability to be present in life or death moments made me feel safe. Protected. Chosen. But somewhere along the way, that part of him stayed at work. At home, he became distant, distracted, drained. The Saturday after Nathan came home, I planned a simple breakfast. Eggs, pancakes, fresh fruit, nothing fancy, but something to bring us together again, even briefly. I was hoping we could reconnect, the three of us. Nathan sat scrolling on his phone while Eric flipped pancakes like he was trying to solve a complicated puzzle. He glanced at me and smiled, that same practiced smile. "You didn't have to cook, babe," he said, touching the small of my back as he walked by. His hand lingered for a second too long, sliding lower in a way that once would have made me melt. But now, it felt like an obligation, like he was trying to check off a box labeled affection. I forced a smile. I wanted to. Nathan chuckled softly at something on his screen. Eric leaned in, lowering his voice. "Maybe we can have some time later," he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "Just us." I nodded, but my stomach clenched. I knew what he meant. He wanted sex. Connection, in his language, meant bodies, not words. But I needed him to see me first. To ask me how I was feeling. To acknowledge that something between us had shifted. "Maybe," I whispered back. But my voice lacked conviction. After breakfast, Nathan left to meet friends. Eric turned to me, hopeful. "So, now?" His hand slid around my waist, pulling me against him. I wanted to want him. I missed wanting him. But as his lips found my neck, I stiffened. His touch felt too eager, too rehearsed. Like he was trying to recapture a version of us that didn't exist anymore. "Eric, wait." I gently pressed my hands against his chest. He pulled back, eyes narrowing slightly, trying to mask the sting. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, I searched for the words, but they knotted in my throat. "I just want to talk first. I feel like we haven't really connected lately." He sighed, his hands dropping from my waist. "Marissa, we're fine. We're both busy, that's all. Work's been insane, and Nathan being home, it's just been hectic." "That's exactly it," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "We're always busy. But when was the last time you really looked at me? Not like your wife who makes dinner, or folds the laundry, or manages Nathan's schedules, but me." He rubbed the back of his neck, frustration flickering behind his eyes. "You're overthinking again. You always do this. You want me to open up, but when I try to show you I care, you push me away. Because it's not the kind of caring I need." But I couldn't say that. Not without sounding ungrateful. Instead, I offered a brittle smile. "Maybe you're right." He kissed my forehead, another autopilot gesture, then grabbed his keys. "I have to head into the station. We're short-staffed." And just like that, he was gone again. I stood in the kitchen alone, staring at the empty plates, feeling emptier than I had before. Later that evening, Nathan came home earlier than expected. I was folding laundry on the couch, trying to distract myself from the hollow ache inside me. He flopped down beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. "Rough day?" he asked, glancing sideways at me. His voice was gentle, warmer than I expected. I blinked, surprised by his attention. "Something like that." For a moment, we sat in a strange kind of silence. His presence was oddly comforting, not in the way Eric's used to be, but in a different, quieter way. Nathan saw me in that moment, even if only as a person, not a role. It scared me how much that simple acknowledgement meant. I looked away quickly, swallowing the lump in my throat, pretending to focus on a towel I was folding. But something inside me shifted. And I knew this tension, this distance between Eric and me, was only growing heavier. It was Sunday evening, and the house smelled like garlic and roasted chicken. I had spent the afternoon cooking, not because I wanted to, but because keeping busy kept my mind from spiraling. Eric was finally off shift. Nathan was upstairs, gaming with his friends. For once, it was just the two of us. Eric poured us both a glass of wine and slid one toward me across the counter. "Dinner smells amazing, babe." His voice was warm, but there was something thin about it. Like he was performing what a husband was supposed to say. "Thanks," I said, forcing a small smile. I didn't want to fight tonight. I wanted to enjoy something. Anything. He reached across the counter and touched my hand. "Hey," he said softly, eyes searching my face. "We haven't had much time lately. I miss you." I swallowed. My chest tightened because I knew he meant it, in his way. And I wanted to feel it, to lean into him, to let it fill the empty space between us. But something inside me stayed locked. "We've both been busy," I managed. "It's understandable." He squeezed my hand, then stood and walked around the counter, placing both hands on my waist from behind. His lips brushed my neck, the way they used to. Only now, the sensation made my skin crawl, not because it was wrong, but because it felt so disconnected from everything else I needed. His hand slid lower, cupping my hips. "Maybe after dinner, we could have some real alone time," he murmured, voice deep and suggestive. I stiffened. My instinct was to pull away, but I didn't want to hurt him. I tried to relax into it, to pretend I was melting into his touch. But my body wouldn't cooperate. It was like watching someone else wearing my skin. "Eric, not now," I said, a little too quickly. He pulled back, his arms falling to his sides. "I'm just trying, Marissa." His voice was tight now. "You keep pushing me away. I don't know what else to do." "I know," I whispered. "I know you're trying." We stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of unsaid words thick between us. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I want us to feel close again." I looked at him, really looked. His handsome face was tired, strained with the weight of everything he carried, work, responsibility, maybe even guilt. But the problem wasn't his effort. The problem was that his way of reaching for me always led straight to the physical. Like that was the answer to every ache. Later that night, as we lay in bed, he tried again. His arm slid around my waist, pulling me close. His breath was warm against my neck as he pressed soft kisses along my shoulder. I lay there frozen, my body present but my mind distant. I felt the weight of his hand sliding under my shirt, fingertips tracing familiar paths. I wanted to feel something. I wanted to meet his affection with my own. But instead, I went stiff, my breath shallow. "Marissa," he whispered against my skin, his voice tentative, hopeful. I turned my head slightly, enough for him to see my face in the dim light. "I'm tired, Eric. Can we, not tonight?" The hurt flickered across his face before he could hide it. "Yeah. Sure." His voice was flat now, edged with disappointment. He rolled onto his back, the gap between us growing colder, heavier. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight with guilt and frustration. My mind raced, questioning, doubting, resenting. Why does everything have to turn into sex? Part 4, Emotional Meltdown. We had planned dinner together that night, just Eric and me. No distractions. No Nathan. I wanted it to be perfect, a chance to reset, to find a spark. I even wore the dress he used to say made his breath catch. But the moment we sat down at the table, the weight of weeks pressing between us felt suffocating. Eric poured wine, smiling nervously. "I thought maybe tonight we could talk," he said. "Really talk." I wanted that too. Desperately. But the words tangled inside me like thorns. "So, how was your day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Busy," he shrugged. "You know, the usual chaos. Lots of calls." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I get it. Silence stretched. Then he reached across the table and took my hand in his. His touch was warm, familiar, but it didn't reach far enough. Marissa, he said gently. I know things have been off. I want to fix this. I want you. His words hit me like a tidal wave, but not in the way he intended. Instead of relief, I felt a raw surge of anger. Because wanting doesn't mean seeing. Do you? I snapped before I could stop myself. The words tasted bitter. Do you really want me, or just this version of me you're used to? He blinked, surprised. What are you saying? I couldn't hold it in anymore. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I'm saying I feel invisible. Like I'm just part of the furniture. Like your son means more to you than I ever will. Eric's face flickered, hurt, confusion, frustration. That's not fair. Maybe not, I said, voice shaking. But it's how I feel. And every time you touch me, it's like you're trying to get something from me instead of giving something back. His jaw tightened. You think I don't love you? I don't know what to think anymore, I whispered. I don't know who I am in this house. I don't even know if I want to be. The room felt heavy, thick with everything we hadn't said for so long. Eric stared at me, eyes dark, searching. I just want us back, I admitted, the words raw and fragile. But I'm so tired of pretending everything is okay when it's not. He was silent, and I knew this wasn't the night for answers. Later, lying in bed, my body still trembling, I hated myself for breaking down. For making him feel like an enemy instead of a partner. For letting my frustration spill into the space between us. But deep inside, I knew it was more than frustration. It was a confession, a desperate cry from someone who had been quietly watching the man she loved grow distant, watching herself fade into the background of his life. And then the memory hit me, the moment I saw Eric light up for Nathan in a way he no longer did for me. That's when I realized, I wasn't just losing him. I was losing myself. I closed my eyes and whispered into the darkness, what happens now? When the person you trusted most becomes a stranger, and the one you're supposed to be closest to, feels like the farthest away? I didn't have an answer. But I knew the silence between us was breaking, and nothing would ever be the same. Days passed like shadows, long, cold, and silent. The house felt empty in a way that wasn't about noise, but absence. Eric and I moved through the rooms like ghosts, circling each other but never quite touching the places where we used to connect. I watched him more than I spoke. He kept to himself, retreating into that quiet space where I couldn't reach him. There were no more late-night talks, no tentative touches. Even when he passed by, his glance was brief, almost apologetic. One evening, I caught him staring out the window, lost in thought. The light caught the lines on his face, lines I hadn't noticed before, worn by years of stress and sacrifice. He looked tired. Defeated. I wanted to reach out, to ask what he was thinking, but the words lodged in my throat. How do you bridge a gap when the other side is guarded by silence? I remembered that night, the meltdown, the tears. I saw the way his eyes softened when I finally spoke my truth, but I also saw the hurt that followed. Not just from my words, but from the years of quiet loneliness we'd both endured. He's hurting too. That thought both comforted and broke me. I'm not alone in this pain. But it also made me question everything. How did we get here? And can we find our way back? I missed him, really missed him. Not just the man who cooked pancakes or made me laugh, but the one who once knew every curve of my heart. I missed the warmth of his hand on my skin, the way his smile made me feel seen. But how do you rebuild when every attempt feels like a stumble? When every touch feels heavy with expectation? I tried to reach him in small ways, making his favorite coffee, leaving a note on his pillow, sitting close enough to catch his scent. Sometimes he responded with a soft smile or a squeeze of my hand, brief and fleeting. Other times, it was silence. And in that silence, I wrestled with guilt. Guilt for feeling lonely when he was carrying his own burdens. Guilt for resenting him when I knew he was doing his best. One night, after Nathan had gone to bed, I sat alone on the couch, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I ran my hands over the fabric of the blanket, searching for some clarity. Do I want to try? To fight for us, for the fragments of what we once had? Or is it time to let go? I don't have an answer yet. But I know this, whatever I choose, it won't be because I'm ignoring the truth of how I feel. I owe myself that much. The night Eric slept on the couch, I watched him from the bedroom doorway, the soft rise and fall of his chest catching the dim light. I wanted to reach out, to pull him close like we used to, like I still hoped we might again. But something held me back. Not resentment. Not anger. Just a quiet recognition of how far we'd drifted. We hadn't said much that evening. After dinner, we sat across from each other, the silence stretching between us. Finally, I broke it with a shaky confession about how lost I'd felt, how invisible I'd become. He listened. Really listened. I'm sorry, he said softly, eyes tired but clear. I didn't realize how much you were hurting. It wasn't a promise that everything would be perfect. It was just honesty, raw and fragile. Later, when I got ready for bed, Eric didn't follow. Instead, he settled on the couch, as if giving us both space to breathe. I stood there a moment, torn between frustration and hope. Then I crossed the room quietly and sat beside him. Without a word, I leaned my head on his shoulder. His arm came around me, a small, tentative gesture, but enough to remind me we were still here. Still trying. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There were no grand declarations or sudden fixes. Just two people, broken but willing to face the hard work of healing. Maybe that's what love really looks like after all, messy, uncertain, but not giving up. Because sometimes, holding on isn't about fireworks. It's about finding warmth in the quiet moments. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to start again. You know, I used to think love was simple. That if two people cared enough, everything else would just fall into place. But I was wrong. Love isn't just about wanting someone. It's about seeing them, really seeing them, and being willing to face what that means, even when it's hard. I learned that desire isn't just a physical thing. It's emotional. It's about feeling safe enough to be vulnerable, about knowing someone holds your heart gently, not just your body. And when that safety disappears, the rest can crumble, no matter how much you want it to hold. I learned how easy it is to lose yourself in a relationship, the roles, the routines, the expectations, and how frightening it can be to try and find your way back. To admit you're hurting, to risk being misunderstood, or worse, rejected. I learned that silence can be louder than words, that absence can hurt more than betrayal. Sometimes, the deepest wounds aren't from what's done, but what's left undone, the conversations avoided, the feelings ignored, the love withheld. I don't have all the answers. I can't tell you what happens next for me or for Eric. Maybe we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe we won't. But I do know this, I won't settle for being invisible anymore. Not to him, not to myself. Because in the end, the hardest love is the one you have to fight for within yourself first. To remember who you are beneath all the noise and disappointment. To give yourself the kindness you deserve, even when it feels impossible. So if you're watching this, maybe you're in a place like I was, lost, confused, aching for something more than what you have. Please know you're not alone. And more than that, know that it's okay to want more. To want real connection, real understanding. Don't ever let anyone make you feel guilty for needing that. Because wanting to be seen, truly seen, is not a weakness. It's the most human thing there is. And if you find yourself at a crossroads, Between holding on and letting go, remember this: sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. Because no matter what happens, your story doesn't end here. It's just beginning.